Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the first news from today's newspaper, front page dawn. A 15% hike in power tariff announced. Rate increase applicable to all consumers in Pakistan. Ministers blame PML and government for unsustainable capacity payments to IPPs. My colleague Kiani. Islamabad Federal Energy Minister Omar Ayub Khan on Thursday announced an increase of rupees 1.95 per unit, 15% in electricity tariff for all consumers in the country to generate about rupees 200 billion. At a joint news conference with Planning Minister Asad Umar and the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Power, Tabish Gohar, the Energy Minister said tariff increase was being made despite tough economic conditions due to compulsions arising out of the land mines left behind by the previous government with, with ill intentions. He said the government was taking a series of measures to control compulsory payments and acting as a shield, otherwise tariff increase would have been around rupees 8 to 9%. He said the decision for tariff increase had been sent to the regulator to issue a schedule of tariff notification. Under the decision, it will be the first time in almost 2 decades that base tariff for lifeline consumers using up to 50 units per month would be increased. Mr. Gar said it would not be a big thing if rupees 2 per unit for this category went beyond rupees 2.50. He said negotiations had been started with sponsors of upcoming power projects of 10,000 megawatt capacity to stagger their completion life timelines to create a breathing space for power consumption and payments. He said the PMLN government did not pass on prior years adjustments in tariff worth rupees 227 billion that should have been recovered by 2019. This required the PTI's government to increase average base tariff by rupees 2.61 per unit, but Islamabad Federal Minister Umar Ayub Khan and Asad Umar and the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Power, Tabish Gohar, addressing a press conference on Thursday, Tanveer Shahzad, White Star. You can see these people. Okay. Oh. All right. Prime Minister Imran Khan decided against putting such a huge burden on the consumers at the outset. Therefore, the government increased the tariff by only 23 paisa per unit at that time and had to absorb rupees 2.38 per unit as subsidy amounting to rupees 247 billion. Mr. Omar said last year the government provided rupees 473 billion subsidy to the power sector despite economic crunch and the COVID-19 to protect the consumers. He said the PTI government had inherited an unsustainable level of capacity payments from the PMLN government. The agreements inked by the previous government in the power sector were based on bad intentions and corrupt practices. He said, adding that due to these agreements, the increase in electricity tariff is 1 year alone, 2019 to 2020, on account of compulsory capacity payments, would have been rupees 2.18 per unit, but the government decided to increase the rates by rupees 1.95 per unit only in 2021. He said the annual capacity payment to independent power projects (IPPs) has stood at rupees 185 billion in 2013, rupees 468 billion in 2018, rupees 642 billion in 2019, rupees 860 billion in 2020, and would reach rupees 1.455 trillion in 2023. These are landmines that the previous government gifted our nation, he said. Mr. Gohar highlighted the key initiatives being undertaken by the government to improve the power sector and reduce the flow of circular debt. He said the negotiations to convert the memorandums of understanding with 53 IPPs into final binding contracts were in final stage that would reduce the final burden on the sector by at least 836 billion over the next 20 years, along with an even greater reduction in the rate of return on the government's own power plants. He said a total reduction of rupees 1 to 2 per unit was expected in the coming years. He added that all of these agreements and any payments under them would be in accordance with the law and applicable regulations. He said the IPPs had volunteered amount about 20 to 25% discount in their tariffs. The payment of rupees 450 billion dues to the IPPs would stop actual of 10% markup, accrual of 10% markup. He said even bigger saving of about 30% in power rates was on account of reduction in rate to return on government-owned power plants in RLNG, thermal, old and new nuclear power plants, and so on. This cut down about 8,000 megawatt would reduce burden by about rupees 6 trillion over 30 years and would be absorbed by government. He said the government's recently announced industrial tariff package to boost power demand by shown encouraging results in the first couple of months, and they expected to see continued progress in the coming days. He said the government had also started negotiations with power plants in the pipeline involving 10,000 megawatt to stagger their completion to create breathing space as consumption had also declined due to difficult economic conditions. The Cabinet Committee on Energy has also decided to impose a moratorium on gas supply to captive power units and incentives and incentivize them to migrate back to the national power grid. All pending new industrial connections are being expedited, expedited by the distribution companies' discourse. The government has already retired almost 50% of the old and inefficient government-owned power plants to reduce their burden on the consumer tariff. The SAPM said the federal government would start working closely with the provincial governments to share the burden of reducing electricity theft and improving recoveries in their jurisdictions, beside introducing private sector participation at the board and management levels. Mr. Gohar said the monopoly of discourse would end in the next 2 to 3 years, and in the first phase, the bulk consumers would be given a choice of supplier via an electricity commodity exchange. And in the end, the formal request, if you have not yet, please subscribe my channel, press the like and bell button to get the fresh from me. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time and goodbye.